The morning sun glinted off the calm water as Maya Johnson checked her equipment one last time. At 28, she had already made a name for herself in marine biology circles, specializing in coastal ecosystem health. Today was perfect for gathering water samples. Clear skies, gentle breeze, and relatively quiet waters. All systems go, Maya muttered to herself, a habit from working alone so often. She adjusted her university cap over her curly hair and double-checked the coordinates on her GPS. This particular stretch of coastline had shown interesting changes in its microorganism population, and Maya was determined to document everything properly. 3 hours into her work, Maya noticed the first sign of trouble. Her small research boat's engine made an unusual coughing sound before sputtering briefly. She frowned, setting down her sample collection tube and moving toward the motor. "Not today, please," she said, checking the fuel levels. Everything looked normal, but when she tried to restart the engine, it gave a weak whine before falling silent. Maya sighed, reaching for her radio. This wasn't her first mechanical issue on the water, and protocol was clear. Call it in. Wait for assistance. After sending her distress call with precise coordinates, Maya returned to labeling her samples. No sense wasting valuable research time. The Coast Guard would arrive eventually, and until then she could continue her work. The boat drifted gently with the current, but she wasn't concerned. She was still well within the research zone and away from major shipping lanes. About 40 minutes later, Maya spotted the approaching Coast Guard vessel, its white hull distinct against the blue horizon. She waved, gathering her identification and research permits. As the larger boat drew closer, she could make out two uniformed figures, a stockier man at the helm and a younger, thinner officer beside him. "Hello," Maya called out cheerfully. "Thanks for coming. I'm having engine trouble." The Coast Guard boat pulled alongside hers with practiced precision. Neither officer returned her smile. The older one, whose nameplate read Wilson, scanned her small vessel with narrowed eyes. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, his tone immediately putting Maya on edge. "Research work," Maya replied, holding up her credentials. "I'm Dr. Maya Johnson from Coastal University Marine Sciences. My engine died about 40 minutes ago." Officer Wilson barely glanced at her university ID and research permit. "What kind of research exactly?" he asked, making air quotes with his fingers. Maya blinked, confused by his skepticism. "I'm collecting water samples to monitor microorganism populations. It's part of an ongoing coastal health study." She gestured to her clearly marked equipment, the university logo visible on several cases. The younger officer seemed ready to accept this explanation, but Wilson cut him off with a sharp gesture. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in these waters," Wilson said, his eyes cold. "Drug runners sometimes use research as a cover." Maya felt her heart rate increase, recognizing the situation was somehow spiraling away from a routine assistance call. "I can show you my full research authorization," she said calmly, reaching for her waterproof document case. "I've been working this area for over 2 years. Don't reach for anything," Wilson snapped, his hand moving to his sidearm. The younger officer looked uncomfortable but remained silent as Wilson stepped from the Coast Guard vessel onto Maya's smaller boat, causing it to rock. He began roughly going through her equipment. "Sir, please be careful with those samples," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're sensitive and important to my research." "Important research, huh?" Wilson said, picking up a collection tube and examining it with exaggerated suspicion. "And what university did you say? I don't recall seeing many people like you in marine science." The implication hung in the air. Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay professional. She'd faced this kind of subtle bias before, though rarely so blatantly in a professional setting. "Coastal University. You can call my department head, Dr. Rivera. His number is on my research authorization." Wilson set down the tube carelessly, nearly spilling it. "No cell service out here." "Convenient, isn't it?" "Use your radio then," Maya suggested, pointing to their communication equipment. "This is a misunderstanding that can be cleared up quickly." The younger officer finally spoke. "Maybe we should verify her credentials, Wilson." "Standard procedure." Wilson turned to his partner. "I know the procedures, Chen, and I know what suspicious activity looks like." Maya stood her ground. "Officer Wilson, I understand you're doing your job, but I've provided identification and proper documentation. My engine failed. I called for assistance according to protocol, and now I'd appreciate either help with my engine or a tow back to the marina. Wilson stepped closer to her, using his height as intimidation. You don't tell me how to do my job. I'm not, Maya said, refusing to back down despite her racing heart. I'm just asking to be treated with professional courtesy. Wilson's face hardened. Your attitude is becoming a problem. Step onto our vessel now. Maya frowned. Why? What about my boat and equipment? This research is funded by a government grant. I can't just abandon it. That's not my concern, Wilson said. Either you comply voluntarily or I'll consider you uncooperative. Officer Chen looked increasingly uncomfortable. Wilson, maybe we should just check the engine first. Wilson ignored him, grabbing Maya's arm. She pulled away instinctively. Don't touch me, she said firmly. I have not done anything wrong, and you have no cause to detain me. What happened next occurred so quickly Maya barely had time to process it. Wilson's face contorted with anger and he shoved her hard. Maya stumbled backward, her hip hitting the low railing of her research vessel. Off balance, she tipped over the side, a short scream escaping before she plunged into the cold water. The shock of it stole her breath. Maya surfaced quickly, gasping and disoriented. Officer Wilson. Chen's voice came from above, sounding alarmed. What are you doing? Through water-blurred eyes, Maya saw Wilson leaning over the side of her boat. She lost her balance, resisting. Write it up as non-compliant behavior. She's in the water, Chen protested. And she can swim, can't she? Wilson replied coldly. Let's go. We've wasted enough time here. Maya treaded water, stunned by what was happening. You can't just leave me here, she called out, spitting out salt water. This is my research vessel. At least throw me a life jacket. But Wilson had already started the Coast Guard engine. Maya watched in disbelief as her own small boat was left adrift and the Coast Guard vessel began pulling away. Wait, she shouted, swimming a few strokes after them. My research. My equipment. Chen looked back at her, conflict visible on his face, but he didn't countermand Wilson's orders. Within minutes, the Coast Guard boat was a shrinking shape on the horizon, and Maya was alone in the water, her research vessel drifting slowly away from her in the opposite direction. Fighting panic, Maya assessed her situation. The shore wasn't visible from water level, but she knew it was roughly 2 miles east. Her vessel was drifting west at a faster rate than she could swim. A terrible choice confronted her: attempt to reach her boat with its valuable equipment and risk being stranded further from shore, or abandon thousands of dollars of equipment and irreplaceable research samples to ensure her own safety. Safety had to come first. Maya oriented herself and began swimming steadily eastward toward shore. Her clothes dragged heavily in the water, and she stopped briefly to remove her shoes, letting them sink rather than waste energy carrying them. Keep calm, she told herself between measured breaths. Pace yourself. As she swam, anger began replacing shock. The unfairness of what had just happened burned in her chest alongside the exertion of swimming. Officer Wilson had acted with blatant prejudice, endangering not just her research but her life. And for what? Because she didn't fit his image of what a marine biologist should look like? The thought of her father crossed her mind. Vice Admiral Thomas Johnson had warned her about situations like this, though neither of them had imagined it coming from within his own service branch. The irony wasn't lost on Maya, even as her arms began to ache from the constant swimming. What Wilson didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to find out before tossing her overboard, was exactly who she was. Not just a marine biologist, but the daughter of one of the highest-ranking black officers in the Coast Guard's history. One stroke at a time, Maya murmured, pushing forward through the increasingly choppy water. In the distance, she finally spotted the shoreline. Relief flooded through her tired body, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. By the time Maya dragged herself onto the rocky shore, her limbs felt like lead. Her clothes, heavy with seawater, clung to her body as she collapsed onto her hands and knees, coughing and gasping for breath. The swim had taken nearly an hour, fighting against the current for much of it. Hey, are you okay? A voice called out. Maya looked up to see an older couple hurrying down the beach toward her. The woman had a camera hanging from her neck. Tourists, probably. I need help, Maya managed between deep breaths. The man reached her first, immediately shrugging off his light jacket and draping it over her shoulders. What happened? Did you fall off a boat? Coast Guard, Maya said, her voice hoarse from salt water and exertion. They left me. In the water. The couple exchanged confused glances. The Coast Guard left you in the water? The woman repeated, clearly not believing what she'd heard. Maya nodded, slowly sitting back on the sand. My research boat had engine trouble. I called for help. The officer. He pushed me overboard and then they just left. That's impossible, the man said, but his wife was already pulling out her phone. I'm calling 911, she said firmly. As they waited for help to arrive, Maya explained what had happened. The couple introduced themselves as Robert and Lisa, retired teachers from out of state who were visiting their daughter. I saw a Coast Guard boat about an hour ago, Lisa said, looking out toward the water. I was taking pictures of the coastline. I think I might have gotten it in some of my shots. Maya's heart jumped. You have photos? From when? Lisa checked her camera. These were taken at 11:42 a.m. That would be right after they left me, Maya said, hope rising in her chest. Can I see? Lisa handed over the camera, and Maya scrolled through the images. Sure enough, several photos clearly showed the Coast Guard vessel in the distance. In one shot, you could just make out a small research boat adrift behind it. This is evidence, Maya said quietly. Would you be willing to share these photos with me? Before they could answer, the wail of approaching sirens cut through the air. Within minutes, paramedics were checking Maya's vital signs while local police officers took preliminary statements. When Maya explained that she was a marine biologist who had been deliberately pushed overboard by a Coast Guard officer, the police officers looked skeptical. That's a serious accusation, one officer said, writing in his notepad. Are you sure you didn't just fall? I'm sure, Maya said firmly. And these witnesses have photographs showing my research vessel and the Coast Guard boat leaving the scene. The mention of evidence changed the officer's demeanor slightly. He asked Lisa and Robert for their contact information and requested copies of the photos. We need to get you to the hospital to be checked out, the paramedic interrupted. You've been in cold water for too long. Maya wanted to protest. Her research equipment was still drifting out there somewhere, but exhaustion and the beginnings of hypothermia were setting in. She nodded weakly and allowed herself to be loaded into the ambulance. At the hospital, doctors confirmed mild hypothermia and treated Maya for saltwater inhalation and numerous scrapes from the rocky shore. Once she was stable and warming up under heated blankets. A nurse brought her a phone. I thought you might want to make some calls, she said kindly. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she dialed her father's number. Vice Admiral Thomas Johnson was currently stationed at Coast Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C., overseeing operations for an entire region. Despite his high rank, he always answered Maya's calls. Maya, this is unexpected. His deep voice came through the line, warm but surprised. They usually spoke on Sunday evenings. Dad, she said, her voice cracking slightly. Something happened. There was an immediate shift in his tone. Are you hurt? I'm in the hospital, but I'm okay, she hastened to add. It's mild hypothermia. Hypothermia? The concern in his voice deepened. What happened? Maya took a deep breath and recounted the events. Her research, the engine failure, the Coast Guard response, Officer Wilson's behavior, and being pushed overboard and abandoned in the ocean. The silence that followed was heavy. When her father finally spoke, his voice was controlled in a way Maya recognized. The tone he used when managing his anger with military discipline. Which unit responded to your call? He asked. Coastal Station 7, I think. The officer's name was Wilson. His partner was younger, Chen, I believe. I want you to file an official report, her father said. Every detail exactly as it happened. I'll start an inquiry from my end. Dad, I don't want special treatment because of who you are, Maya said. This isn't about special treatment, he replied firmly. This is about accountability. What happened to you was not only unprofessional, it was potentially criminal. Would you give the same advice to any other victim in your situation? Maya knew he was right. Yes, I would. Then follow procedure. File the report. Let the process work. There was a pause. I'm booking a flight. I'll be there tomorrow. After ending the call, Maya leaned back against the hospital pillows, exhausted. A soft knock at the door drew her attention. A local police detective entered, introducing himself as Detective Rivera. Dr. Johnson, I'd like to take your full statement when you're feeling up to it, he said. We've received the photos from the witnesses on the beach, and we've contacted the Coast Guard about your research vessel. Have they found it? Maya asked hopefully. Detective Rivera nodded. A fishing boat spotted it drifting about 4 miles offshore. They're towing it in now. I'm afraid some of your equipment was damaged by water exposure. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Months of research possibly ruined, but at least the boat hadn't been lost entirely. What about the Coast Guard officers? Have you spoken to them? The detective's expression turned careful. We've contacted Coastal Station 7. Officer Wilson filed a report about the incident this afternoon. And? Maya prompted. According to his report, you became combative when questioned about suspicious activities and accidentally fell overboard while resisting lawful commands. He claims they attempted to provide assistance, but you refused and stated you would swim to shore. Maya stared at him in disbelief. That's a complete lie. They left me in the water. They didn't throw me a life ring, they didn't offer assistance, they just drove away. I believe you, Detective Rivera said, raising a calming hand. The photos support your version of events, showing the Coast Guard vessel leaving the scene with your boat visibly adrift behind it. That contradicts Wilson's claim that they stayed to help. A small measure of relief washed over Maya. At least someone believed her. There will be an investigation, the detective continued. These are serious allegations against a federal officer. It won't be simple or quick. I understand, Maya said. I just want the truth to come out. After the detective left, Maya received another visitor, her department head, Dr. Rivera, who had rushed to the hospital after hearing what happened. This is outrageous, he fumed, pacing beside her bed. We're filing a formal complaint with the university's backing. That officer should be fired at minimum. Maya appreciated his support but felt too drained to match his energy. My dad's flying in tomorrow. He works for the Coast Guard, actually. That's good. You'll need family support through this, Dr. Rivera said, misunderstanding. Maya didn't correct him. She wasn't ready to reveal her father's position yet. Admiral Johnson had always taught her to fight her own battles when possible, and to let situations develop based on their merits, not on who her father was. That evening, as Maya was preparing to be discharged, a nurse brought her a tablet with local news pulled up on the screen. You might want to see this, she said gently. The headline made Maya's stomach drop. Local researcher claims mistreatment by Coast Guard. The article was brief with few details, but it mentioned that the Coast Guard was looking into allegations of misconduct during a routine assistance call. Maya handed the tablet back, suddenly feeling the weight of what lay ahead. This was no longer just about her and Officer Wilson. It was becoming public, which meant scrutiny, questions, and likely attempts to undermine her credibility. As she signed her discharge papers, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her father. Arriving 9 a.m. tomorrow. Stay strong. Truth matters. Maya took a deep breath. Her father was right. Truth mattered. What happened on that water wasn't just about her. If Officer Wilson had done this to her, what might he have done to others without cameras nearby or an admiral's daughter to hold him accountable? The fight was just beginning. The next morning, Maya stood at the airport arrival gate, nervously shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Despite having slept at her apartment, exhaustion still clung to her. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the shocking cold of the water, the panic of watching the Coast Guard boat shrink into the distance. The stream of arriving passengers suddenly included her father, instantly recognizable even in civilian clothes. Vice Admiral Thomas Johnson carried himself with the straight-backed posture of his 30 years of military service. At 58, he remained physically fit, with close-cropped hair now mostly gray and the same warm brown eyes as Maya. When he spotted her, his serious expression softened. He wrapped her in a tight hug, holding on longer than usual. I'm okay, Dad, Maya said, though she clung to him just as tightly. Let me look at you, he said, stepping back and examining her face with concern. You look tired. I am tired, she admitted. But I'm not hurt, just some scrapes and bruises. They collected his single suitcase and headed to Maya's car. As she drove them back to her apartment, Thomas remained mostly quiet, asking only a few clarifying questions about her medical treatment. Maya recognized the behavior. Her father was processing, analyzing the situation before taking action. Have you spoken with anyone from the Coast Guard yet? He finally asked as they entered her apartment. Maya shook her head. Just the local police. Detective Rivera said they've opened an investigation, but warned me it could be complicated because it involves federal officers. Thomas nodded, setting his suitcase in the guest room. I made some calls last night. The station commander at Coastal Station 7 is Lieutenant Paul Dawson. I know him, not well, but our paths have crossed. Dad, Maya said cautiously. How are you approaching this? As my father or as Vice Admiral Johnson? Thomas sat down at her kitchen table, his expression serious. Both, but carefully. I've requested the official incident reports through proper channels. No one at the local level knows who I am to you yet. I don't want special treatment. Maya repeated her concern from their phone call. And you won't get it, he assured her. But I won't pretend I don't have the authority to ensure this is investigated properly. He reached across the table and took her hand. Maya, what happened to you wasn't just unprofessional. It was dangerous and possibly criminal. And based on what you've told me, I suspect it was racially motivated. Maya nodded slowly. The same thought had been circling in her mind. Wilson made comments. About people like me in marine science. Thomas's jaw tightened. Document everything. Every detail you remember, every comment made. We'll need it all. Maya's phone rang, interrupting them. It was Dr. Rivera from the university. Maya, how are you feeling? He asked when she answered. Better, thanks. My dad's here now. Good. Listen, I wanted to let you know that a Coast Guard representative called the department this morning. They want to speak with you about your allegations, as they put it. Maya felt a flash of anger at the word allegations, as if she might be making the whole thing up.
Did they say when?
They requested a meeting tomorrow at their headquarters. I told them you'd need more time to recover and have proper representation. Thank you, Maya said, glancing at her father. I appreciate that. After ending the call, she relayed the information to Thomas, who nodded thoughtfully. They're moving quickly. That could be good or bad. He pulled out his own phone. I need to make a call. Excuse me for a minute. While her father stepped onto the balcony to make his call, Maya opened her laptop. She had avoided social media since the incident, but now curiosity got the better of her. She typed Coast Guard researcher into the search bar. The results made her stomach sink. Several news outlets had picked up the story, most with variations of researcher claims mistreatment by Coast Guard. The comment sections were even worse, people questioning why she was alone on a boat, suggesting she must have done something to provoke the officers, or flatly stating they didn't believe her story. One comment stood out. Convenient that this marine biologist doesn't have any proof of what really happened. Just her word against our Coast Guard heroes. Maya closed the laptop just as her father returned. The internal investigation is officially open, he said. I spoke with Rear Admiral Winters, who oversees that region. He's taking this seriously. People online aren't, Maya said, gesturing to her closed laptop. Thomas sighed. The court of public opinion is rarely fair, but we're going to focus on facts and procedure. 2 days later, Maya and her father arrived at Coast Guard headquarters for her official interview. Maya had prepared a detailed written statement, reviewed by both her father and a lawyer friend who specialized in civil rights cases. As they waited in a conference room, Maya felt her nerves growing. What if they don't believe me? It's still my word against his. Not quite, Thomas reminded her. We have the photographs from the tourists showing the Coast Guard leaving the scene. We have the contradiction between Wilson's report and the physical evidence. And we have your documented injuries consistent with extended time in cold water. The door opened, and 3 people entered. A woman in civilian clothes who introduced herself as Investigator Pamela Howard from the Internal Affairs Division, Lieutenant Dawson from Coastal Station 7, and another man in uniform who was introduced as Commander Rogers, the regional legal officer. Maya noticed their reactions when Thomas introduced himself as Vice Admiral Johnson. Their expressions shifted from professional politeness to surprise, then careful neutrality. You're Admiral Johnson? Lieutenant Dawson asked, clearly caught off guard. Yes, Thomas said simply. I'm here as Maya's father and advocate. I trust that won't be an issue. Of course not, sir, Commander Rogers responded quickly. We're committed to a thorough and fair investigation. The interview proceeded professionally, with Investigator Howard taking the lead. Maya recounted the events in detail, referring to her written statement when needed. She described Officer Wilson's comments, his aggressive behavior, and the moment he pushed her overboard. And at no point did either Officer Wilson or Officer Chen throw you a life ring, extend a boat hook, or offer any assistance after you went into the water. Howard clarified. None, Maya confirmed. Officer Wilson started the engine and they left. Officer Chen looked back but did nothing to help me. Lieutenant Dawson frowned. That contradicts Officer Wilson's report. Yes, it does, Thomas said evenly. Which is why the photographic evidence is so important. It clearly shows the Coast Guard vessel leaving the scene with Dr. Johnson's research boat visibly adrift in the background. Howard nodded, making notes. We have obtained those photographs. We're also reviewing radio communications from that day. The questioning continued for nearly 2 hours. Maya remained composed, though the repeated retelling of the incident was emotionally draining. Finally, Howard closed her notebook. Dr. Johnson, thank you for your detailed account. We'll be continuing our investigation, including interviewing Officers Wilson and Chen separately. As they prepared to leave, Lieutenant Dawson approached Thomas. Admiral Johnson, may I have a word privately? Thomas glanced at Maya, who nodded. I'll wait outside, Dad. In the hallway, Maya found a chair and sat down, finally allowing her shoulders to slump. The formal, detailed questioning had been exhausting. A young Coast Guard officer walked by, glancing at her curiously. He paused, then approached. Excuse me, he said hesitantly. Are you Dr. Johnson? The marine biologist? Maya tensed. Yes, I'm Officer Chen, he said, looking nervous. I was there that day with Officer Wilson. Maya straightened immediately. You're the one who just watched while he pushed me overboard. Chen winced. I know how that looks. I should have done something. I came to say I'm sorry and... He lowered his voice. I want you to know I'm telling the investigation everything. What Wilson did was wrong. Before Maya could respond, the conference room door opened. Her father and Lieutenant Dawson emerged, both with serious expressions. Chen quickly excused himself, hurrying away down the corridor. What was that about? Thomas asked, watching Chen's retreat. That was Officer Chen, Maya explained. He apologized and said he's cooperating with the investigation. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Lieutenant Dawson just informed me that Officer Wilson has a history of complaints, 3 in the past 2 years, all involving confrontational behavior with civilians. All 3 complainants were people of color. Maya felt a chill. And he's still on active duty? The complaints were handled at the station level, Thomas said, his voice tight with controlled anger. They were deemed unsubstantiated and filed away. No pattern was officially recognized. Until now, Maya said quietly. As they walked to the car, Thomas's phone rang. He answered, listening intently before thanking the caller and hanging up. That was Commander Rogers, he said. They've retrieved the radio communications from the day of the incident. Wilson reported assisting a non-compliant civilian researcher, but made no mention of anyone going overboard. Chen can be heard in the background saying something partially garbled about in the water, which Wilson talks over. Maya stopped walking. So there's proof he lied in his report. Thomas nodded grimly. Yes, and now they can't ignore it. For the first time since the incident, Maya felt a small sense of vindication. The truth was coming to light piece by piece. Whatever happened next, Officer Wilson would have to face the consequences of his actions, and the system that had protected him would be forced to acknowledge its failure. News of the investigation spread quickly through Coast Guard circles. By the following week, Maya found herself at the center of a story that was gaining national attention. Local news had picked it up first, but now larger outlets were running headlines like, Coast Guard officer accused of pushing researcher overboard, and investigation reveals pattern of misconduct. Maya sat at her kitchen table, scrolling through news articles on her tablet. The coverage was mostly factual, though some outlets emphasized the racial component more than others. A few conservative blogs had taken Wilson's side, suggesting Maya was exaggerating or that there must have been justification for the Coast Guard's actions. Her father entered from the guest room, already dressed in his uniform. He had been working remotely during his stay, balancing his regular duties with supporting Maya through the investigation. Morning, he said, pouring himself coffee. Did you sleep any better? Maya shook her head. The nightmares had continued, falling into endless water, struggling to reach a shore that kept moving away. Not really, but I'm managing. Thomas nodded, understanding in his eyes. As a career military man, he recognized the signs of trauma. The disciplinary hearing is tomorrow. Are you ready? As ready as I'll ever be, Maya said, setting down her tablet. Dad, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. What is it? How are you handling this? I mean, you've devoted your life to the Coast Guard. Now you're watching an officer disgrace everything it stands for. Thomas was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. The Coast Guard's mission is to save lives, not endanger them. What Wilson did goes against everything I believe in, and everything the service represents. He sat down across from her. But I'm not naive, Maya. I know racism exists within the ranks just as it exists in the broader society. Have you experienced it? She asked softly. She and her father rarely discussed his experiences as one of few black officers to reach Admiral rank. Of course, he said simply, both subtle and overt. But I've always believed that changing systems requires working from both outside and inside. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. What happened to you was wrong. But exposing it, holding Wilson accountable, that's how change happens. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dr. Rivera. Turn on Channel 8 News right now. Maya quickly grabbed the remote and switched on the television. They were just in time to catch Officer Wilson walking out of what appeared to be a lawyer's office, surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Officer Wilson, do you deny pushing Dr. Johnson overboard? Were your actions racially motivated? Do you have a response to the other complaints filed against you? Wilson, looking stressed but defiant, stopped and faced the cameras. I acted according to protocol with a non-compliant civilian. Any suggestion that race played a factor is completely false. I've served the Coast Guard honorably for 9 years, and I look forward to clearing my name at tomorrow's hearing. As he tried to push through the crowd, one reporter called out, "What about the photos showing you leaving the scene? And the radio communications?" Wilson's face tightened. "No comment," he muttered, hurrying to a waiting car. The camera cut back to the news anchor. Officer Brent Wilson faces a disciplinary hearing tomorrow regarding the incident involving marine biologist Dr. Maya Johnson. Sources inside the Coast Guard indicate that Wilson's partner, Officer Andrew Chen, has provided testimony contradicting Wilson's version of events. Maya muted the television. He's sticking to his story. Of course he is, Thomas said, his expression grim. Men like Wilson rarely admit wrongdoing, even when the evidence is overwhelming. What do you think will happen tomorrow? Maya asked. Based on what I've heard from Commander Rogers, termination is likely. The evidence against Wilson is substantial. Maya nodded. Feeling a mix of emotions, relief that justice seemed possible, anxiety about facing Wilson again, and lingering anger over the whole situation. I should get to the lab, she said, standing up. Dr. Rivera salvaged what he could of my samples. I need to see if any of the data is still usable. Thomas looked concerned. Are you sure you're ready to go back to work? I need to, Maya said firmly. I can't let Wilson take my research from me too. The University Marine Lab was quiet when Maya arrived. Most of the other researchers were out in the field or working from home. Maya was grateful for the solitude as she made her way to her workstation. Dr. Rivera had placed her recovered equipment and samples in her area, each item carefully dried and labeled. Many of the electronic devices were clearly water-damaged beyond repair, representing thousands of dollars of grant funding. Several sample containers had cracked or opened during their time adrift, contaminating or losing their contents. Maya sat heavily in her chair, surveying the wreckage of months of work. She had backed up most of her data, but the lost samples meant gaps in her research timeline, gaps that would be difficult to explain to grant committees. I thought I might find you here, a voice said from the doorway. Maya turned to see Dr. Rivera. Just assessing the damage, he nodded sympathetically. It's not as bad as it could have been. The fishermen who recovered your boat did their best to secure everything. I know. I'm grateful. Dr. Rivera hesitated. There's something else you should know. I received a call this morning from Dean Phillips. The university wants to issue a formal statement supporting you before tomorrow's hearing. Maya raised her eyebrows in surprise. The university administration wasn't known for taking public stands on controversial issues. Apparently, Dr. Rivera continued with a slight smile. Several major donors contacted the president's office, concerned about how a young black female researcher was treated by government officials. The university's sudden courage may have financial motivations, but it's support nonetheless. I'll take it, Maya said, managing a small smile of her own. As Dr. Rivera left her to her work, Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. The text read, "Dr. Johnson, this is Andrew Chen. I need to speak with you before tomorrow's hearing. It's important." Maya stared at the message, unsure how to respond. After a moment, she typed, "What about?" The reply came quickly. "Something Wilson did that isn't in my official statement. Something you need to know." Maya hesitated, then called her father to discuss the message. He advised caution but agreed it could be important. "Meet him somewhere public," Thomas suggested. "I'll come with you, but stay in the background." They arranged to meet Chen at a coffee shop near campus in the afternoon. When Maya arrived with her father, Chen was already there, nervously fidgeting with a paper cup. He looked younger out of uniform and decidedly uncomfortable. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as Maya sat down across from him. He nodded respectfully to Thomas, who took a table nearby, close enough to overhear but giving them some privacy. "What did you want to tell me?" Maya asked directly. Chen glanced around, then lowered his voice. "After we left you in the water, Wilson went back to the station and immediately called Lieutenant Dawson. I wasn't supposed to hear the conversation, but I was in the next room filing equipment reports." Maya leaned forward, interested despite her lingering anger toward Chen for his inaction that day. "Wilson told the lieutenant that we had an incident with a belligerent researcher who accidentally fell overboard but was fine and refused assistance," or Chen continued. "But then he said something that wasn't in my official statement because I only remembered it clearly last night." "What did he say?" Maya asked. "He said, don't worry about it being a problem. She's just some black girl playing scientist. No one important." Maya felt her breath catch. The casual dismissal, the assumption that she wouldn't matter. It confirmed everything she had suspected about Wilson's motivations. "I should have reported it immediately," Chen said, guilt evident in his voice, "but I was afraid of crossing Wilson. He has connections at the station. At least he did until now." "Why tell me this now?" Maya asked. "Because it should be part of the record," Chen said. "I've already called Investigator Howard to amend my statement. I wanted you to know before the hearing." As Chen left, Thomas joined Maya at her table. "What do you think?" he asked after she relayed the conversation. "I think it's genuine," Maya said. "The way Wilson treated me out there. It fits with what Chen overheard." Thomas nodded slowly. "This adds another dimension to tomorrow's hearing. Are you ready for it?" Maya took a deep breath, thinking about everything that had happened since that moment in the water. The fear, the anger, the investigation, and now this final piece of evidence confirming what she had felt in her gut all along. "Yes," she said, her resolve strengthening. "I'm ready to face Wilson and tell my truth. Whatever happens tomorrow, he needs to answer for what he did." Thomas smiled slightly, pride evident in his eyes. "That's my daughter." As they left the coffee shop, Maya noticed a news van parked down the street. The story was still growing, still attracting attention. Tomorrow's hearing wouldn't just be about one officer or one incident. It would shine a light on deeper problems, on biases that persisted even in institutions dedicated to protecting and serving. For the first time since the incident, Maya felt a sense of purpose overriding her anger and fear. What happened to her was wrong, but perhaps some good could come from it if the truth was finally acknowledged. The morning of the disciplinary hearing dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the stormy feelings inside Maya as she prepared. She chose her clothing carefully, professional but not flashy, a simple navy blue dress with a light jacket. She wanted to be taken seriously, to be seen as the scientist she was. Her father drove them to Coast Guard headquarters in silence. They had prepared as much as possible, reviewing her statement, practicing potential questions, and discussing strategies for staying calm under pressure. Now there was nothing left to do but face what was coming. "Remember," Thomas said as they pulled into the parking lot, "just tell the truth. Your experience is valid. Don't let anyone make you doubt what happened." Maya nodded, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Let's do this." The hearing room was larger than Maya had expected, with a long table at the front where 5 senior Coast Guard officers sat, including Rear Admiral Winters, who would lead the proceedings. Officer Wilson sat at a table to the left alongside his lawyer and union representative. Maya and her father were directed to a table on the right. Commander Rogers, the legal officer she had met during her interview, approached them. "Dr. Johnson, Admiral." He greeted them quietly. "Just to update you, Officer Chen arrived early to amend his testimony. The panel has been informed of his additional statement. Thank you, Maya said, feeling a flutter of nervous energy. The room was filling with observers, other Coast Guard personnel, a few reporters who had been granted access, and, to Maya's surprise, Dr. Rivera and several colleagues from the university. At precisely 9 a.m., Rear Admiral Winters called the room to order. This disciplinary hearing will now commence. We are here to review the conduct of Officer Brent Wilson regarding an incident on May 17th involving Dr. Maya Johnson. The proceedings began with a summary of the official investigation by Investigator Howard. She methodically outlined the evidence, Maya's consistent testimony, the photographic evidence from the tourists on the beach, the contradictions in Wilson's official report, the radio communications, and now Officer Chen's amended statement regarding Wilson's comments after the incident. Throughout the presentation, Maya kept her eyes forward, avoiding looking at Wilson. From her peripheral vision, she could see him shifting uncomfortably, occasionally whispering to his lawyer. Officer Wilson's account suggests Dr. Johnson was non-compliant, potentially engaged in suspicious activity, and accidentally fell overboard while resisting lawful commands, Howard concluded. However, the evidence strongly contradicts this version of events. Wilson's lawyer attempted to challenge some of the evidence, particularly the photographs, suggesting they didn't clearly show what had happened on the water. He also questioned why Maya had been alone on her research vessel, implying this was somehow suspicious or improper. Maya fought to keep her expression neutral as the lawyer continued. My client has served honorably for 9 years. One disputed incident should not overshadow his entire career. The panel notes your objection, Admiral Winters said evenly. Now we will hear directly from the parties involved. Officer Wilson, please state your account of the events. Wilson stood, straightening his uniform. Maya finally looked at him directly. His face was tense, his expression carefully controlled. On the morning of May 17th, Officer Chen and I responded to a distress call from a small vessel with engine trouble. Wilson began, his voice steady. Upon arrival, we found Dr. Johnson alone on a research boat. Her behavior seemed suspicious. She was evasive about her activities and reluctant to answer standard questions. Maya felt a surge of anger at the lies, but her father placed a calming hand on her arm. As per protocol, I requested she board our vessel while we assessed her boat, Wilson continued. She became agitated and non-compliant. During this interaction, she lost her balance and fell overboard. We attempted to provide assistance, but she refused, stating she would swim to shore herself. At no point did I push Dr. Johnson or abandon her in the water. Thank you, Officer Wilson, Admiral Winters said. Dr. Johnson, please provide your account. Maya took a deep breath and stood. She could feel all eyes in the room on her. My research vessel experienced engine failure that morning, and I followed protocol by radioing for assistance, she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. When Officers Wilson and Chen arrived, I provided my identification and explained my research. Officer Wilson immediately treated me with suspicion and hostility. Maya recounted the events clearly, describing Wilson's comments about people like her in marine science, his aggressive behavior, and the moment he pushed her overboard. After I fell into the water, neither officer threw me a life ring or offered any assistance. Officer Wilson simply started the engine and left me there. I was forced to abandon my research equipment and swim nearly 2 miles to shore in cold water, resulting in mild hypothermia and various injuries. Her voice remained steady as she finished. I believe Officer Wilson's actions were not only unprofessional and dangerous, but were motivated by racial bias. The room was silent when she sat down. Admiral Winters thanked her and called Officer Chen to speak next. Chen looked nervous but determined as he stood. My original statement was incomplete, he began. I was afraid of potential repercussions, but I can no longer remain silent about what really happened. He confirmed Maya's version of events, describing how Wilson had been immediately hostile, how he had pushed Maya overboard, and how they had left without providing assistance. Then he added the crucial conversation he had overheard. Afterward, Officer Wilson called Lieutenant Dawson and described Dr. Johnson as just some black girl playing scientist and said she was no one important. His tone and words made it clear that he didn't consider her worthy of respect or assistance. A murmur ran through the room. Wilson's lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently to his client. Wilson's face had reddened, his jaw clenched tight. After Chen's testimony, Admiral Winters called a brief recess for the panel to confer. Maya stepped outside for some air, her father beside her. "You did well," Thomas said quietly. "Very well." Maya nodded, still processing the experience of telling her story in that formal setting, of facing Wilson directly. Chen's testimony was powerful. It was brave, Thomas agreed. He risked his career to tell the truth. When they returned, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Wilson sat stiffly at his table, no longer whispering with his lawyer. Admiral Winters called the hearing back to order. "After reviewing all testimony and evidence, this panel has reached a decision." She looked directly at Wilson. "Officer Brent Wilson, we find that you violated multiple Coast Guard protocols and ethical standards. You endangered a civilian, abandoned someone in distress, filed a false report, and demonstrated conduct unbecoming a Coast Guard officer." Wilson stared straight ahead, his face now pale. "Furthermore," Admiral Winters continued, "the evidence strongly suggests your actions were influenced by racial bias, which has no place in the United States Coast Guard." She laid out the panel's decision: immediate termination of Wilson's position, forfeiture of certain benefits, and referral of the case to the Department of Justice for potential criminal charges. This panel also recommends a full review of all complaints previously filed against Officer Wilson, as well as a broader review of complaint handling procedures at Coastal Station 7. As the hearing concluded, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication, relief, lingering anger, and a deep exhaustion. It was over, but the effects of that day in the water would remain with her. Outside the building, reporters called out questions as Maya and her father emerged. Thomas stepped slightly in front of her, protective. "My daughter has been through enough," he told the reporters firmly. "She has no comment at this time." As they walked to the car, Maya spotted Chen standing alone near the parking area. She hesitated, then approached him. "Thank you for telling the truth," she said simply. Chen nodded, looking both relieved and uncertain. "I'm sorry I didn't act sooner, both on the boat and afterward." "You did the right thing in the end," Maya said. "That matters." 6 months later, Maya stood on the deck of a new research vessel, watching the sunrise over the water. The university had received special funding to replace her equipment and expand her research program. The incident had sparked important conversations about bias in law enforcement and safety, protocols for researchers working alone. Thomas had been appointed to head a new Coast Guard task force on diversity and inclusion in training and operations. Several officers at Coastal Station 7, including Lieutenant Dawson, had been reassigned or disciplined for their role in suppressing previous complaints. Chen had been transferred to a different station and was working to rebuild his career. As for Wilson, he now faced criminal charges for reckless endangerment and civil rights violations. The case was working its way through the legal system. Maya checked her equipment one last time. Today was her first solo research trip since the incident. Her hands trembled slightly as she started the engine, not from fear, but from determination. A Coast Guard vessel appeared on the horizon, approaching for a routine check. The new protocol required regular safety check-ins with solo researchers. As the boat drew closer, Maya recognized Officer Diane Patterson, who had been assigned to the area after the restructuring. "Good morning, Dr. Johnson," Patterson called, her tone professional and respectful. "All systems operational today?" "All good," Maya confirmed. "Thank you." As the Coast Guard boat continued on its patrol, Maya turned her attention back to her research. The water stretched out before her, once again a place of discovery rather than fear. She had reclaimed not just her work, but her sense of belonging on these waters. The truth had come to light. Change was happening, and Maya was back where she belonged, continuing the work that mattered to her and to the world.